Hello, and welcome to tonight's live stream. So you can tell by the name of the title, I'm going to make a Sonic the Hedgehog magnet out of polymer clay. So I have my reference image of Sonic here, and I just want to do the head, and I'm not worried about making it exact proportions and stuff. I'm just using this as my reference. I feel cartoon characters lend themselves really well to sculpting out of polymer clay. So I thought it would be fun to make one of Sonic the Hedgehog. So I'm starting off with some blue Primo Sculpey. It's a little bit darker than that Sonic, but I know Sonic has had many different iterations throughout the years. Not a huge fan of modern Sonic, but I definitely love retro Sonic. So I thought it'd be fun with the new movie out. Actually, a coworker gave me the idea to do this one tonight, and thought it would be a good one to do with that new movie out and do something related to that. So the tricky part of doing cartoon characters is they're two-dimensional. And I know they've done three-dimensional versions of Sonic, but to take the two-dimensional image and turn that into like almost a 2.5D with these magnets. They're going to be flat on one side, but they're going to end up, being kind of rounded and have some sculpting to them. So I want to start off with my basic shape. And I do have an extra piece of paper here so I can move it around and work at it at different angles. I'm going to adjust my desk just a little bit. I want to make sure I'm not too far down. The main thing with Sonic is he's got his little spikes back here, so I want to do those. So I'm just going to get this clay nice and soft, kind of do an almost triangular shark fin-ish type thing. And I want these to be more in the background. So I'm going to tear a little bit off here. So I'm going to kind of line it up, kind of how it goes across on the picture here. I want that same motion, so I'm not quite there yet. So I could take my X-Acto knife, kind of cut it, so I can kind of angle it. And then I'm going to go in with my ball tool, smooth this one on. And just get it attached here. I'm still not quite the angle I want, and I think almost because I think what I have here is more of a circle, and this here is the top going up. So I'm going to kind of try to mimic that. Bring this down in there. And I'm just going to cut off a little bit. thought doing these magnets would be a fun thing to do with the live stream because it's not a full figurine, shouldn't take as long, and because it's flat on one side, it's the the 2.5D. It'll be easy to see, hopefully, from the camera's perspective. So I've got my first spike, and I think cutting off that part of it there definitely helped. So I'm going to get a little more clay here and build his next fin. And here he's got one big one right, going at the top, and he's got another one coming almost straight over from his eyes, and then he's kind of going down. And I think, with this picture here, it's hard to tell if that's part of his body or his head. But in other artwork I remember seeing, I think I'm almost going to do that part of his head. I think having just two fins won't look like enough here. So I thought, well, I'll go ahead and add that third fin. And maybe even go, yeah, this one's going to be a little bit smaller. So we're going to trim in there. And those pretty much butt up against each other, so that's what I'm going to do here. And I'm just going to take my ball tool to merge these pieces together. And then just kind of get my shape. I can bring it back here. I know I'm working on that surface there, but want to get to the backside and just kind of help those pieces bond together. So, got second spike done. Go ahead and do a third one down here, and then I'll start working on, I think, his ears. As I'll do his ears next. Get those placed, and then I can do his face. So I've got the basic shape of this little spike. I'm going to go back in with the X-Acto knife like I did with the other ones. I think I went too far on that because I don't want it to be like down there. Well, maybe if I do this, if I kind of position it a little bit higher. Go in. Yeah, that actually might work. Smooth a lot of this out. Now I am going to go ahead and mark how I want to do his face with the ball tool. Decided to do that before I do the ears. And to me, when I sculpt, everything's in layers. So when I'm looking at a 2D character like Sonic, I want to look at, okay, I want to do the blue first, and then the eyes, and then the mouth, and then the nose. And then obviously the ears are separate because they're not connected directly to those other parts of his face. So I've got a nice indention there, and then I want to come up. And so I've got the indention here for his mouth, and I want to come up around to do his eyes. So I'm just kind of doing some indentions here. And I'm going to smooth this area out. And I decided I'm going to do his eyes out of pearl instead of white. That's my go-to for white. Plus I figure they're eyes, so I want them to be a little bit shiny. And I may or may not add a gloss coat to this guy when he's done. You know, gloss his eyes, his nose. Make them look a little more wet. So we're getting the shape dug in here. You can see here where this eye is and how he's got, I don't like the way this background color is pretty close to the other color, but he's got some blue sticking out. And I'll probably take some blue clay and kind of give him more of an eyelid area like he's got here. One thing about Sonic, at least in this artwork, you know, you got to make sure to remember his eyes are connected. Even though they're two eyes, there's no lines separating them. My proportions are a little bit off, but like I said, I'm just using this as a reference. So long as it looks like Sonic in the end, that's the important part. So I'm going to start with this back ear. And so what I'm going to do is kind of a rounded triangle. And then I want it to look like it's behind, even though it really won't be, unless I did it really thick. So I'm going to go up above. You see, it starts right at this eye. And then I want to press down. And I want that as flat against the background as possible. So I had a little bit of, I lost my point a little bit to it. So one thing when you're doing characters, and you're doing something like a cartoon character or a character from pop culture, you're not, I shouldn't say you're not, most likely it's not going to look exactly like your reference material. And to me, that's a good thing. Like, there's no reason to do something exactly like somebody else did because you're not making it your own. And so for me, I want it to look like Sonic, but I still want it to, you know, represent that it's a piece of my artwork. So just keep working on this. I'm trying to decide if I should add some texture to his, what would be his fur, because this is holding a lot of fingerprints. And one thing I've learned through the years, that if you have flaws in something that's smooth and you add a texture to it, it's going to hide a lot of those flaws. So sometimes it's, you know, fun to add those textures and you come up with a better product that way. Get a better end result. So I wanted to make his mouth area a little bit bigger, and since this is carved out and that's going to go on top, it kind of looks like he's like, ah! Kind of screaming there. So now the tricky part. I need to do his ear up here, which has a little bit of the beige in it. So I've got to switch colors. I'm not quite ready to do the beige because I want to do the white first here. So I will get this sculpted out and kind of just place like that. I'm almost wondering if I can get that in place and dig that out, and then I can just slide a piece of beige in there. So I'm going to take the smaller ball tool and smooth this in. I'm going to go in, I'm going to add my indentation area. You can see, hopefully, it's visible enough. You can see how that goes in there. So I'm going to go ahead and bring this up to the camera. You can see there where I carved in that ear, and then his other ear. It's kind of back farther. He's got some specks there, but this clay is pretty glossy in this state. But I think I'll go ahead and finish up this ear, and then I'll sculpt the eyes and stuff. Hi, Tails Doll Channel. How are you tonight? Thanks for joining in on the live stream. Hi, Energy Art. Thank you. Having a lot of fun making this little Sonic. Has anybody seen the Sonic movie? I have not seen it yet, but I've heard good things about it. I definitely am one that is on board of the redesign from the original trailers. That initial design was pretty rough looking. Definitely looked like a Hollywood version of Sonic. Awesome, Tails. I'll have to check the movie out. It is showing in our local theater here, hopefully at least for another week. So I've got my blue sculpted out on this. Now I'm going to go and got some baby wipes off to the side of my desk. I'm going to clean my hands up a little bit so I don't get some color transfer, and then I'm going to soften up some of my pearl and do the eyes. It's one of the bad things about working with pre-colored clay is you'll get that pigment on your hands when you soften up that clay quite a bit. Blue's not too bad, red's terrible. Red's the worst, and then of course, you know, when you do anything that has red and white, then you're always going to run the risk of transferring that to the white, and the white picks up everything. Henceforth why I use pearl. So take a chunk of the pearl off here. That's softened up. I'm not using too much of the pearl, so I shouldn't have to worry about, you know, I don't have to soften up a huge chunk like I had to do for the blue, which I did that ahead of time. So now what I want to do is, normally when I make eyes, I'd make two separate eyes. But with Sonic, how the way his eyes join, I don't necessarily want to do that because I don't want to have a seam line in here. So I'm going to go ahead, and it's almost like making goggles. I'm going to try my best to match this with my artwork and with the areas I have opened up already, which I'm not quite there yet. And what'll be nice is you can, once I get this in there, I can spread it out a little bit with a tool, and it'll still be one piece. Yeah, so I'm really having some issues here with the shape. So I cut some of the blue with my X-Acto knife, so I want to clean that off with the paper towel. I go in and cut some of this pearl here. That's getting closer. Cut a little more off of it. Around this piece here. Tails Doll Channel says, I always tried to make Sonic with clay. I made it where you connect the head, arms, body, and legs together. The face was good, but the spikes looked off. So that's looks good so far. Well, thank you. Yeah, and I mentioned this at the beginning, but I know people weren't tuned in right when it goes live. But I do that for people that watch the the repeat. But it's very tricky to take a 2D image like this and make it, I call it 2.5D, because you want to have some depth when you're sculpting it. And animals, especially like Mickey Mouse, the way his ears are, he's not always drawn like he would be, in if he was real. And I know they have, obviously Mickey's been around forever, and there's 3D things of him, and there's been 3D things of Sonic since then. But it is a little bit tricky to capture the look of your source material and make it three-dimensional. Energy art. I'm making glass cabochon eyes for one of my clay creatures right now. Awesome. I wanted to make some glass dragon eyes and then put them in some, I want to do like a dragon out of Warbler. So, I think this will work. I'm going to go ahead and outline that when I get this done. Bring that in a little bit. And I think by doing that, it'll give me a little more depth to him. And one thing I didn't do is I left a space here with this blue, and I want to bring that down because that beige is going to come up into his eye area. By glancing at that, that looks roughly the right shape to me. So I'm just going to clean up my hands a little bit more. I shouldn't have too much issue because the pearl doesn't transfer as much other than some sparklies. But I did push that blue in a little bit. So keep that cleaned up. So now with the beige, I want to go in and do the mouth and the inside of Sonic's ear. So we're going to soften up a little bit. I just have, what I'm going to do is go a little bit smaller than what I need, and then I can spread this out with the smaller ball tool. It's getting away from me. Well, that's not really even that much smaller. It's actually a perfect fit. So I'm just going to push it in a little bit. I'll try to get a little bit of a point. Look at there. And then I'm going to just push this in with this rubber tipped tool here. And to me, this looks like it's too much beige, but that's okay because I can, when I go back in with the blue, I can put some over right here. So that should work. Now I want to shape the mouth area. I'll just drop my clay on my sculpture because that's what I do. So, shape this out. I think I have just a little bit too much. So I want to go with the shape that I've carved out, but I'm also looking at my reference photo here. has a nice, I don't even know what shape you'd want to call that. It's kind of a, it's rounded, not quite a hot dog bun. Tails Doll Channel, did you know Sonic was going to be a rabbit? Yeah, I don't think I've heard that. I remember, reading magazines about when Sonic came out, but it's been so long since then. I could see that though. I mean, especially when they consider, rabbits are more so considered like a faster animal than a hedgehog. But I think they went with a good choice. Obviously, it was a very successful mascot for them, and it's nice to see the movie is doing well. And hopefully, Sega comes out with a new game that's decent. I heard that, was it Sonic Mania that's out for everything is really good. Is that the correct one? Do you know, Tails Doll Channel? I'm pretty easily influenced by what's around me. Meaning, there's a new Sonic movie. I mean, I'm just like those people that are like, oh, well, I want to play a Sonic game, which I have versions of the Genesis ones. I have, a lot of the collections. I have that collection on the Switch. And then I think I have one for the Xbox, but I think between the two of them, they have most of them except for Sonic 2. And I think isn't there some legal rights with the music or something? I think Sonic 1 is the only game I've beat from beginning to end. So maybe I need to go back and play some more Sonic games. Alright, so shaking my desk there. So here's another tricky thing about doing cartoon characters in polymer clay. So he doesn't have a full mouth, even though instinctively I'd want to give him one. I've got to stay away from that to try to capture the look of this. To me, this almost looks a little too big. Maybe if I bring it in a little bit. Let the camera see that. I'm going to pick this up. So, what I'm going to do is I want this smirk of his. So I want to bring it there. And then I want to give it this little hook indentation. And I kind of want to go with even a smaller ball tool to bring that in deeper. So I'm going to work this in a little bit deeper here. And just kind of give it a nice curve to it. I'm going to use my needle tool so I just get it nice and fine, which maybe is what I should have started with in the first place, but wanted to, kind of bring it out a little bit more. So I'm just kind of rocking this needle tool back and forth to kind of smooth it. Hi Jessica, thank you. I'm doing the same thing here at this little hook area. Look at that. It's starting to look like Sonic. actually, I didn't mention this. I'm using Primo Sculpey for the colors, except for beige. I'm using Super Sculpey. My Primo beige was like hard as a rock, and I've had that issue a lot with it, so I don't know what's going on. And it's, you know, usually the same age as everything else. My art studio is down in the basement, and it is cold down here, so I don't know if that affects it. But it's just something I noticed. I wasn't too happy with. So the next thing I'm going to do is, like I said, I thought I got too much beige in his ear, but I can cover that up. Putting a little bit of blue in there. So I'm going to try to match up my picture there. I've got clay sticking to everything. I think for those of you who have joined me on some other live streams, I think I'm going to do maybe once a week or every other week do a live stream that shows off what I've done in the previous ones, because as I'm sculpting these, as I'm sculpting these, I have to, you know, bake them off camera, because nobody wants to sit here for 30 minutes waiting for them to bake. So I thought it would be fun to do a live stream showing the finished product, you know, after it looks like after it's baked, and if I had a gloss coat and stuff like that. So these videos are art with Andrew, and I think just for simplicity, those videos will be Andrew's art. Pretty original, huh? Tails Doll Channel says, we can all agree back we thought Sonic had two eyes. Well, I mean, I always assumed he did. I mean, just that sprite just flipped. I don't remember, like, the box art. I mean, I never gave it much thought. You know, it's like, that's the box art. You know, and I think technically he probably does have two eyes. But just the way it looks here, it definitely looks like one uniform eye. And you'll notice here, I'm trying not to cover up everything, this part of his forehead that comes down is a lot farther than I have it here, so I'm going to go ahead when I add my eyelids, or eye rims, whatever, I don't know if they're eyelids on Sonic, that I'm going to bring that down farther. It definitely worked to go into the ear. So I'm going to roll out a snake of the Primo Blue. Got that stuff on some blue on my wax. I want to make sure get that picked up so it doesn't transfer to something else if I use it. So, and this is going to be way too long, but it's easier to work with extra clay than not enough. It's like a little tip when you mix a color to make sure to mix more than you need, because you will not be able to match that color unless you, I mean, are just absolutely dead on the amounts you use to make it. Some characters and monsters I've made a clay recipe book. That way I knew exactly how much clay I used for something. Okay, so you're looking, you're like, oh, if you can see that, it's not quite covering, and I'm aware. I just wanted to get this about where I wanted it on length, make sure it's long enough. Now I'm going to take that off of there, and I'm going to bring that center piece down. Go in. Now I'm going to smooth it. Get more of the traditional Sonic look. go in, I'm going to outline his eyes again. And then I'm just going to get these shapes evened out. Still think I have that a little bit too long there. So, trim that off. And bring that in. All right, now I'm just going to go in, even that out with my ball tool. Energy Art asks, how often do you work from reference pictures? Pretty much anytime I do something that's pop culture related, except for Groot. I've made so many different Groots, I don't use a reference picture for him. And even if I don't use it much, I'll still refer back to it just a little bit to make sure it kind of still captures the essence of what I'm sculpting. I think on my artwork, you know, maybe a third of it is pop culture related, maybe less, and the rest of it's original creations. And it's, you know, it's always fun to do pop culture stuff, but also I like the recognition for my, you know, people that enjoy my original monsters. Something I really like to do when doing pop culture is to do something nobody else has done. I'm a pretty big fan of Iron Maiden, and their mascot Eddie is their, you know, zombie guy, if anybody's familiar with them. So I did an Eddie Necronomicon, which is the Book of the Dead from Cthulhu or H.P. Lovecraft, and also used in Army of Darkness. So, as far as I know, nobody else, you know, no company is going to make an Eddie Necronomicon, but it was something I could do because I don't have to, you know, worry about limitations of licensing. You know, I just make one of a kind things. I'm not mass producing anything. So it's fun to do stuff like that. All right, so there's pretty happy with the shape of that. It's a pretty big magnet, but it'll work. So now I'm going to do the black. I'm going to do the eyes and the nose. And although they do have a little light catch thing there, I don't know if I'll do that or not. Sorry, I know I was going to do the black, but I just kind of know some of the stuff needed to adjust a little bit. I kind of smooth this in. All right. Bring that up to the camera. All right, guys, I'm going to go ahead, clean up my hands a little bit. I'll sculpt out a little bit of black to use for the eyes and the nose. So, a little bit of a snake here made, I rolled out for something else. I'll fill it just a little bit more. Move that aside, and that's why I have this on the paper, because I can move it all around and get it out of my way, bring it back down when I want to work on it. So I'm just going to soften up my black clay. I'm going to try to make them about the same size. They don't have to be perfect. We'll get them pretty close. Get them right there. Right there. Well, this one I want up a little bit higher. And this happens all the time. I'll be working on something and I'll notice some part I need to fix or touch up. So just wasn't happy with how this looked here on this edge. He looks weird without a nose. Hopefully he looks okay once I add it. So this is what I'm going to go for the nose. I think that looks pretty good. But I am worried that it's going to droop. So I've got a little bit of wire. So I want it to go in about there. And what you can do, because I don't want to, if I push this on, I don't want to distort it too much. I can take my needle tool, and this is a lot smaller than my wire, but this will give me a good starting point. The only thing that's tricky about that is you want to make sure to cover that wire up. Okay. So there's a close-up of the sonic magnet. You can see here, like, and I know this won't bake shimmery, but I think it needs some texture. So I want to add some texture to where what would be his fur. So I think I'll take my needle tool. And I'm not an expert on doing fur on polymer clay, but I just want it to be, you know, some fuzzles. The main thing is to kind of stick with the same direction. So I'm not worried about doing the eyelids. So I'm just going to go in here. And although this reference picture doesn't have the fur in here, I know there's a lot of, you know, versions of them that do, including the movie one. So I go in and do these. Jessica gives it a thumbs up. Thank you. I don't think it's too shabby for my first attempt at Sonic. I have done quite a few video game characters, though. There's a video of a Hollow Knight, and I did an Octorok amiibo on my channel. Done a lot of things from Castle Crashers. I really want to do at least some of the monsters from Doom. I don't know if I want to do like the originals or some of the new ones. The originals will be fun because they're simpler, and I think they would work well in my style. Some of the newer ones I think would be fun to do out of like Warbler. So I'm just going to keep texturing this guy. And I don't know how well you guys can see it, but there's going to be some rough spots, and those you can kind of sand off after it's baked. So this ear, I want to keep its direction going a little bit different than his back spike there. So although part of it matches up. This other part's going to go follow the shape of the ear with his little hairs. My issue with texturing, sometimes I overdo it. I love just, it's kind of very therapeutic to just sit there and add these textures. And sometimes it can be overdone, especially if you're, adding spots to something or scales. It's like, oh, when do I stop? The answer is never. I'm just kidding. So again, it works very nice to use the paper because I can turn this around and I'm not like, having to pick it and pull it off of the wax, worry about distorting my sculpt. And what's nice about the magnets, because they're flat on the back and I'm able to do this, I can do these in one sculpting session. Or if I did a Sonic figurine, I would do multiple sessions, which does not lend to doing a live stream of, unless it's multiple live streams. But I don't necessarily want people to feel like they have to hunt down other parts of a video. I did do one video series that was for my cosplay mask. That was a few parts. And I always found it interesting, part 1, and I think probably part 4. I know part 3 has quite a few views. Got more views than the others. Like, they want to see how it started and they want to see an end result. Which is fine, but it's nice when the whole process is watched. All right. Just about done here. Just going to go through. Add a little more texture to the top here. Yeah, to me the texturing definitely helps. I'll bring it up to the camera again, because I know this is kind of a long view, but otherwise if I didn't do it that way, I think I'd be blocking a lot of the stuff. Alright, let's get this ear done. Almost thought I had it. All right. Get the underside. So these little specks things will come off. Bring this up to the camera. All right, well, I think my Sonic is done. Round this off just a little bit more. Hope you guys enjoyed tonight's live stream. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe to my channel. If you want to be notified when I do another live stream, be sure to ring the notification bell. All right, guys, thanks for watching, and remember, never stop creating. Bye!